Energy is defined as the ability to do work, which for biology purposes can be thought of as the ability to cause change. Energy can take many different forms. For instance, we are all familiar with light, heat, and electrical energy. So all living organisms need to grow and reproduce, maintain their structures, and respond to their environments. Animals consume food to replenish energy. Plants convert light energy from the sun into chemical energy stored in the molecules during the process of photosynthesis. So every task performed by living organisms required energy. Energy is needed to perform heavy labor and exercise. For every action that requires energy, many chemical reactions take place to provide chemical energy to the systems of the body, including the muscles, nerves, heart, lungs, and brain. The living cells of every organism constantly use energy to survive and grow. Cells break down complex carbohydrates into simple sugar that the cell can use for energy. Muscle cells may consume energy to build long muscle proteins from small amino acid molecules. Molecules can be modified and transported around the cell or may be distributed to the entire organisms. Just as energy is required to both build and demolish building, energy is required for both the synthesis and the breakdowns of molecules. Here, we will look at some types of energy that are particularly important in biological system, including first is the kinetic energy, which is the energy of motion. For instance, a speeding bullet, a walking person, the rapid movement of molecules in the air that produces heat, and electromagnetic radiation such as sunlight, all of these have kinetic energy. The second is the potential energy, which energy due to position or structure. A spring has more potential energy when it compresses or stretch. The last one is the chemical energy, or the potential energy of chemical bonds. Chemical energy can be changed into the other forms of energy through chemical reactions or chemical changes. For instance, the photosynthesis changes from solar energy into chemical energy. Cellular respiration, a set of reactions that changes the chemical energy in glucose into chemical energy in ATP, a form our body can use. So always remember that the energy is never lost, but it can be converted from one of these forms to another. All cells have several components in common. This includes a cell membrane, which acts as a selective permeable barrier to molecules entering or leaving the cell, cytoplasm, which is a jelly-like substance that forms the bulk of a cell's mass and serves as a medium in which organelles can sit and for reactions to occur. The ribosomes, which are protein nucleic acid complex whose sole job is manufacturing proteins, and the DNA or the deoxyribonucleic acid, which contains the cell's genetic information. Other critical organelles include the endoplasmic reticulum, a sort of membranous road system that packages and processes proteins while moving them between the cell exterior, the cytoplasm, and the nucleus. The Golgi apparatus, which are vesicles serving as a miniature taxis for these substances and can dock with the endoplasmic reticulum, and lysosome, which serve as the cell waste management system by dissolving old, worn-out molecules. The energy-related organelles. There are two types of membranous organelles that specialize in energy conversion, and these are the chloroplast and the mitochondria. As we all know, the chloroplasts use solar energy to make carbohydrates by using photosynthesis, and mitochondria break down carbohydrates to produce adenosine triphosphate, or which is the ATP, and this ATP supplies the energy the cells to do work. So the chloroplasts are found in plants and other photosynthetic organisms. The large inner space is the stroma and is filled with fluid, and this fluid contains enzymes that use for photosynthesis. Another is the thylakoids. These thylakoids are disc-like sacs that contain the green pigments that absorb light energy. And these thylakoids are organized into stalks. Each stack of thylakoids are called granum. So for the mitochondria are surrounded by a double membrane. The folds of the inner membrane are called cristae. The ATP is produced on the cristae, and the folds help to increase surface area so that the more ATP can be made. So the inner membrane encloses the matrix are the fluid-filled compartment. And mitochondria are often called the cell powerhouse because they produce most of the ATP.
In this presentation, I will be talking about enzymes. So enzymes is a substance that acts as a catalyst in living organisms, regulating the rate at which chemical reaction proceed without itself being altered in the process. A substance binds to the active site, trusted source of an enzyme, and is converted into products. Once the products leave the active site, the enzyme is ready to attach to a new substrate and repeat the process. The biological process that occur within all living organisms are chemical reaction, and most are regulated by enzymes. Without enzymes, many of these reactions would not take place at a perceptible rate. Enzymes catalyze all aspects of cell metabolism. This includes the digestion of food, in which large nutrient molecules such as proteins, carbohydrates, and fats are broken down into smaller molecules. The conservation and transformation of chemical energy, and the construction of cellular macromolecules from the smaller precursors. Many inherited human diseases such as albinism and phenylketonuria result from a deficiency of a particular enzyme. So, what does enzyme do? In the digestive system, enzyme help the body break down larger complex molecules into smaller molecules such as glucose so that the body can use them as fuel. Next is DNA replication. Each cell in your body contains DNA. Each time a cell divides, that DNA needs to be copied. Enzymes help in this process by unwinding the DNA coils and copying the information. Next is liver enzymes. The liver breaks down toxins in the body. To do this, it uses a range of enzymes. So, next is the metabolism. So, metabolism refers to all the chemical processes your body uses to produce energy. Your body converts food to energy to carry out the everyday function it needs to maintain itself. You may want to know more about your metabolism, what affects it, and if you can change or boost it. Your body breaks down carbohydrates, fats, and protein from drink and food and converts this into energy for everyday function such as breathing, digesting food, circulating food, repairing and growing cells. Your metabolic rate is the amount of energy your body uses per day to carry out this function. The energy is measured in kilojoules. So, how does your metabolism work? Your metabolism involves two processes, catabolism and anabolism, that are carefully regulated to maintain in balance. Catabolism is the process of breaking down food into simpler forms, releasing energy, while for anabolism is the process of using this energy to grow and repair cells in the body. If your body consumes more energy than it needs, it usually stores the excess as fat. What can affect your metabolism? Factors that affect your metabolism includes body size and composition. So in body size and composition, larger people, including those with more muscle, burn more kilojoules even when resting. Next is gender. Men usually burn more kilojoules than women of the same age and weight, partly because men often have more muscle relative to body weight. Next is age. As you get older, you lose muscles, which slows metabolism. Next, genes. Genes play a role in muscle size and growth, which can affect your metabolism.
Let's move on to aerobic respiration and mitochondrion. Aerobic respiration is a metabolic process in which oxygen is utilized to break down carbs, lipids, and proteins to produce adenosine triphosphate or ATP. Mitochondria are eukaryotic species engine rooms as they are the primary location of cellular respiration. Mitochondria are cytoplasmic organelles with two membranes that are found in most eukaryotic cells. They are in charge of aerobic respiration, which involves oxidative phosphorylation to provide energy for the cell. Mitochondria are frequently referred to as the cell's power plants since they are the organelles that produce the majority of the cell's ATP supply. The four stages of cellular respiration includes glycolysis, pyruvate oxidation, citric acid cycle, and oxidative phosphorylation. In glycolysis, glucose, a 6-carbon sugar, undergoes a series of chemical transformations. In the end, it gets converted into two molecules of pyruvate, a 3-carbon organic molecule. In these reactions, ATP is made, and NAD+ is converted to NADH. In pyruvate oxidation, each pyruvate from glycolysis goes into the mitochondrial matrix, the innermost compartment of mitochondria. There, it is converted into a 2-carbon molecule bound to a coenzyme A, known as acetyl-CoA. Carbon dioxide is released and NADH is generated. In the citric acid cycle, the acetyl-CoA made in the last step combines with a 4-carbon molecule and goes through a cycle of reactions, ultimately regenerating the 4-carbon starting molecule. ATP, NADH, FADH2 are produced and carbon dioxide is released. Lastly, in oxidative phosphorylation, NADH and FADH2 made in other steps deposit their electrons in the electron transport chain, turning back into their empty forms. As the electrons move down the chain, energy is released and used to pump protons out of the matrix, forming a gradient. Protons flow back into the matrix through an enzyme called ATP synthase, making ATP. At the end of the electron transport chain, oxygen accepts the electrons and takes up protons to form water.
Photosynthesis and its process. As we know, chloroplast is an organelle found in plants, wherein it is responsible for photosynthesis. This organelle functions similarly to mitochondria. Both of these organelle functions to generate metabolic energy. The chloroplast can be found inside the plant cell as round, oval, or disc shape as shown in the image, which is involved in the synthesis and storage of food. The chloroplast has an inner and outer membrane, with an empty intermediate space in between. Inside the chloroplast are stacks of thylakoids called grana, as well as stroma, the dense fluid inside of the chloroplast. The space inside the thylakoid disc are called thylakoid lumen. These thylakoids contain the chlorophyll that is necessary for the plant to go through photosynthesis. The green color of the plants is due to the presence of two pigments, chlorophyll A and chlorophyll B, wherein these pigments absorb light energy coming from the sun for the process of photosynthesis. Moving on to photosynthesis, it is a compound word made up of photo, which means light, and synthesis, which means to put together. It is a process by which water, carbon dioxide, and light energy are converted into glucose and oxygen. As we can see on the diagram, it shows the process of how photosynthesis works and the enzymes involved in it. Photosynthesis has two stages, a light-dependent reaction and the light-independent reaction, also known as Calvin cycle.
The light-dependent reaction takes place within the thylakoid membrane and it requires a steady stream of sunlight, hence the name light-dependent reaction. The chlorophyll absorbs energy from the light waves, which is converted into chemical energy in the form of the molecules ATP and NADPH. The light-independent stage, also known as the Calvin cycle, takes place in the stroma, the space between the thylakoid membrane and the chloroplast membrane, and it does not require light, hence the name light-independent reaction. During this stage, energy from the ATP and NADPH molecules is used to assemble carbohydrates molecules like glucose from carbon dioxide. And now, let's talk about the C3 and C4 photosynthesis. C3 photosynthesis is used by the majority of plants. It involves producing a 3-carbon compound called 3-phosphoglyceric acid during the Calvin cycle, which goes on to become glucose. C4 photosynthesis, on the other hand, produces a 4-carbon intermediate compound which splits into carbon dioxide and 3-carbon compound during the Calvin cycle. A benefit of C4 photosynthesis is that by producing higher levels of carbon, it allows plants to thrive in environment without much light or water.